Hey listeners, make sure to check out our 2-week free trial for unlimited yoga, breathwork, and Ayurveda on betteryoga.net.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Better Yoga Podcast. My name is Kari Harendorf, and today I have the great honor of introducing, if you have not yet known or heard of, my dear friend and the incredible Ayurveda and yoga educator, Larissa Carlson. Hey, Larissa.
Hey, Kari. It's so nice to be here with you today.
The pleasure and privilege is all mine. So, Larissa, we start all our podcasts by asking our guests, what does your practice look like these days?
My practice nowadays is a mix of things. I wake up and do some morning stretches every morning, a little bit of bed yoga and some warm-ups while I'm waiting for my Ayurvedic hot water to boil and heat up. And then I hydrate, clean my senses, and get outside. That's really the daily non-negotiable. In addition to that, there are loads and loads of other practices that I do every day, both in the yoga and the Ayurveda realm. But those morning practices are the most essential to keep me, feeling on track.
Yeah, morning is the best time to set yourself up for the day, as we say.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you will share a little bit in how you first discovered Ayurveda and how you led to kind of weave it into the yoga, because it's a niche for sure and something that's becoming more and more popular for people to discover.
Yeah, I first met Ayurveda the way I think a lot of folks nowadays are meeting Ayurveda, which is in a spa treatment. And I was gifted a gift certificate to get a massage at Kripalu Center, which is, of course, where you and I met many, many years ago. And I'd never heard of Ayurveda, but I picked out on the menu what I thought was the juiciest thing there, and it was called an Udvartana Shirodhara, which is basically a very messy kind of exfoliation massage, followed by a really relaxing stream of oil on the forehead, which is sort of like instant meditation. And when I went in to have my treatment, the practitioner took my pulse and did a dosha questionnaire to see which of my three energies or doshas were kind of out of whack and needed the most help. And the practitioner chose the oils for the treatment based on my intake form and based on my pulse. And so that was brand new to me. I've never had that kind of experience at a spa before. And then the treatment itself was just delicious. It was like being scrubbed with like crunchy peanut butter, kind of, but filled with about 20 or 40 herbal herbs mixed into this sort of messy exfoliation paste. And it just smelled delicious. And I felt myself relaxing on the massage table in a way that I just hadn't with, my typical massages and Swedish massage and stone massage and such that I do love as well. And so that was my first introduction to Ayurveda. And that was about 22, 23 years ago. And I've been on the path ever since.
Right. So for someone who is unfamiliar with it, what is your elevator speech if they ask you, what is Ayurveda?
Ayurveda is a system of medicine. It's a full, complete, sophisticated system of medicine from India. It's often described as yoga's sister science because both yoga and Ayurveda come from the wisdom texts of India, known as the Vedas. But they've made their way over to the West separately. So in a lot of ways nowadays, practitioners of Ayurveda are trying to reunite yoga and Ayurveda because they really are one system and they work really well together. Ayurveda being a system of medicine, it focuses on supporting the health of the body-mind, maintaining health, while preventing disease. And that's Ayurveda's main goal, is to maintain health and prevent disease. but it also works with disease states and health conditions. It focuses on everything we might experience in this incarnation. So Ayurveda gives us practices for diet, lifestyle, self-care, massage therapy. It covers everything from prenatal care to geriatric care, psychology, surgery, pretty much you name it. Ayurveda has something to say about it. So a beautiful, vast system of medicine that focuses on healthy living and living in harmony with nature.
Right. And that living in harmony with nature is what carries over to be the real difference between traditional yoga classes that people might take and an Ayurvedic yoga class that you teach. And so if you just want to say a little bit more about what that entails, what are the tenets of Ayurveda yoga?
So bringing Ayurveda into a yoga practice really elevates the yoga practice, exponentially, in my opinion. What Ayurveda really focuses on is living in harmony with nature and thereby living in harmony with the changing weather patterns and the seasons. Both the seasons externally in the macrocosm of nature and also the seasons of life. And so Ayurveda is very skillful at shifting practices based on what's happening in and around us. So just like we change clothes based on the temperature outside, based on the season and the weather, Ayurveda would say we should change what we're eating based on the season, eating with the seasonal harvest, and we would change up the yoga asana, pranayama, and meditation practice based on the season. So for instance, one of the main principles or tenets of Ayurveda is a law or a rule. And the rule is like increases like and opposites balance or opposites decrease. And it's a rule of common sense. It's a rule that I know a lot of our listeners are very familiar with, but we don't always think about our choices based on this rule. And that's where Ayurveda really adds a lot of sophistication. So the rule is based on the qualities that we experience, like hot and cold, or heavy and light, or oily and dry. We have these qualities, sets of qualities. And so, for instance, if I'm feeling cold and I eat a lot of cold foods, cold plus cold equals more cold, right? Like increases like. But if I'm noticing that I'm feeling cold and I eat foods that are warming, cold plus warm equals harmony, equals balance, right? So, we make these choices based on our clothing, based on the weather. If it's hot outside, right, we use less clothing. If it's warm outside, or, if it's hot outside, less clothing, and cold outside, more clothing and such. But we want to take these principles and apply them on the yoga mat. And so Ayurveda will shift the way the practice is done, the pace, the duration, the intensity, different body parts that are being worked more in a practice based on the season, the weather, the stage of life, in order to bring about more harmony and balance. Now, there's a lot more to it than that, but that's the overview.
Yeah, it's so great. I mean, I was in your class yesterday for Vata balancing here and filming in late fall, and it was hard. We were working the legs. It was so good and so nice. So for those of you listening, to also just change up your yoga routine and try something else. And so I always used to say, if you take a good beginner class, it should be really hard if you are someone who does a flow or vinyasa style all the time, because you're breaking down the pose. You're doing long holds. And we did a 4-minute tree pose on each side yesterday.
After 2 minutes of eagle on each side.
It was so good. It was so good. And so also just I want to talk about now the concept of doshas. And I'm sure, because even if you're not familiar with Ayurveda, you might have read an article or seen someone has said to you, like, oh, what's your dosha? So if you could talk about that a little bit, and then how people can maybe find out what their dominant dosha is, so they can start to know how to balance things out.
Yeah. So the word dosha is often translated as an energy, an organizing energy or an energy that has certain functions both in the body-mind and out in nature. So doshas are energies, organizing energies. And the word dosha actually means at fault. So these are energies that can get into trouble. They can cause suffering if we let them, they can get out of whack. But basically we have these three energies, three doshas, and they're made up of the 5 elements, which we talk about a fair amount in yoga, right? Space, wind, fire, water, and earth are the 5 elements. And everything in the universe is made up of those 5 elements. Now those 5 elements, they merge together or join together in pairs to form the 3 doshas. So we have space and wind joining together to form Vata dosha. Then fire and water join together to form Pitta dosha. And water and earth, you could think of water and dirt, joining together to make Kapha dosha. So these 3 forces or energies are made up of these 5 elements, and each energy has qualities from those 5 elements. So Vata is made of space and wind, so it has no real substance, but it has a lot of qualities, right? It's cold, it's missing fire. It's dry because it's missing water. It's light because it's missing earth. So it's a very subtle energy. Vata is a very subtle energy. It's cold and dry, and it's also mobile. It's a mobile energy, just like the wind moves. It's an energy really of movement. We could boil Vata down to that. And Vata is going to be in charge of all of the movements in the body-mind, all the movements in the body-mind. No matter what your constitution, everybody, according to Ayurveda, has all 5 elements. Everybody has all 3 doshas performing certain functions in the body-mind. And Vata's functions are all about movement. So Vata governs everything that moves from the gross to the subtle. So the movement of the breath, all the pranayama is governed by Vata. The process of chewing food, swallowing it, the movement of food through the digestive tract, the downward, outward release of waste products, those are all governed by Vata, as well as the beating of the heart, the circulation of the blood, the movement of nerve impulses through the nervous system, even the subtle movements of the thoughts in the mind. Everything that moves is governed by Vata. So when things are moving smoothly, then we know that Vata is balanced. But when things are not moving smoothly, then Vata has become spoiled, and it's causing trouble. So for instance, like hiccups, the breath is not moving smoothly, or constipation, the waste products are not moving smoothly, or memory loss, right? The movements are not going gracefully in the mind. And so the doshas, we want them to be balanced and working well and playing nicely in the body, but often they get thrown off course because they're affected by what we're choosing. They're affected by free will, how we're living life. Okay, so that's Vata. And Vata also governs the season that we're in right now, right? The late fall and the winter, when we have a lot of these Vata qualities showing up in the macrocosm of nature. So it's cold outside, it's dry, it's very windy this time of year, and so those Vata qualities start to accumulate. I'm going to give you just a tiny view of Pitta and Kapha, but we're going to focus mostly on Vata right now because we're in that Vata season, and Vata tends to just be the dosha that gets into trouble most often, no matter what's happening. But Vata governs this fall and winter season, and it governs all movement in the body-mind. So we want that moving smoothly. Now let's compare that to Pitta. Pitta dosha is an energy of fire and water, so it's like a hot acid, like a hot liquid. Pitta governs the summer season, when we have heat and humidity in the macrocosm of nature, right? When it's hot and humid out, that's Pitta season. Internally, Pitta has all of these qualities of fieriness, right? Wetness or oiliness. It's a very intense dosha, so it's a very sharp, penetrating kind of dosha. It's the only dosha with a fire, so it's going to have a certain amount of fieriness and intensity to it. And it's a liquid dosha. It governs all the digestive enzymes and actions in the body. So the Pitta is like the cook of the body. It takes food, it breaks it down, it transforms that food into new tissues. Pitta also helps to digest information. So as folks are listening to me talk about this right now, your Pitta dosha in your brain, the gray matter of your brain is trying to digest what I'm saying, right? That's Pitta's job, digesting food and digesting information, experiences, sensations, everything we experience, right? So Pitta can have too much fire, right? We could burn, get some extra burning. We can have inflammation if there's too much fire. And that fire could go out or kind of smoke, right? It could be too dull, not enough fire, like low metabolism, that kind of thing. And so Pitta shows up in all of us. We all have Pitta governing digestion and transformation. But we're going to shelf Pitta for now and just take a quick look at Kapha. Kapha dosha is made of water and earth. So it's sort of like mud or muddy water or clay, right? We get dirt and water mixing together. So Kapha governs the spring. When it's damp, when it's wet, the mud season, the thaw season, the rainy season. Today is actually kind of a Kapha day in Vermont. It's very damp out there and somewhat mild in temperature. So Kapha governs these kind of cold, cloudy, rainy, even sleety days. Those are Kapha days in the early spring to the late spring. That's Kapha season. Now everyone has Kapha dosha, and Kapha dosha governs all the cool lubricants in the body. It's kind of like a protector dosha. It's like a bodyguard. It's a very strong energy, very strong force. And it protects the body from the movements of Vata and the fiery actions of Pitta. So Kapha is very, very important for protecting. It is a very kind of sticky, thick, wet, heavy, dense energy. Right? It's the strongest of the doshas. And so in the body, we're going to see Kapha as the synovial fluid that lubricates the joints and protects the joints, as well as the cerebrospinal fluid. That's Kapha. Kapha is the saliva in the mouth, the wetness there that breaks down food. Kapha lines the lungs, protecting the lungs from all that Vata dry breathing all day. Otherwise, the lungs would dry up and shrivel up, right? So Kapha is like a thin layer of the mucosa. We have that same layer in the stomach, protecting the stomach from all the hot Pitta acids like hydrochloric acid, right. Protects it, and supports the microbiome in that way. And so Kapha is this very protective energy or force. But we can have too much mucus, right? So we can have Kapha accumulate through that law of like increases like, and we can feel bogged down, mucusy, have sinus congestion, lung congestion, frog in the throat, stuff like that, or have extra weight, extra water, feel puffy, kind of sluggish, right? So there could be too much Kapha, or there could be too little, where we get like really dried up, feel like our protective layer has been depleted in some way. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And there's, of course, a lot more to Pitta and Kapha. But Vata is the main dosha that we want to focus on because Vata is the mover. And Pitta and Kapha are considered to be lame in the body. Vata moves them around like an Uber driver. And so when Vata is balanced, when Vata is playing nicely, things move well. The breath is fluid, the digestive tract is working well, elimination is smooth and regular, the mind is calm, and things are being digested well. So we want Vata to be balanced. We want them all to be balanced, but Vata is really the key player. Yeah. And so a lot of what we do is bring the doshic understanding into the yoga space and consider the season of the year and how we can balance out the seasonal qualities, the season weather, through the movement of the body in asana, pranayama, and meditation, using a lot of qualities opposite to that season. So just briefly here to finish up my piece for now, it's the beginning of Vata season now, right? Or we're in Vata season now. We could say stage 1 of Vata season is fall, stage 2 is winter. And so we're in that stage 1 where it's windy and cold and dry out. And we're affected by the weather, right? So a lot of listeners right now may be noticing dryness in the lips, dry skin, dry nails, dry hair, starting to dry mouth. We start to feel the dryness of the body, as well as sometimes feeling a little wind blown, scattered, ungrounded, restless, spacey, kind of jacked up, right? So you get that, like the nervous system gets
frenetic.
Exactly. Yeah. Chaotic. Yeah, exactly. And so we can have too much showing up in the system. So in Ayurveda, basically what we would do is on the yoga mat do a lot of practices that are warming because it's a cold season. We do a lot of practices that are very grounding or rooting because it's a very unrooted season. It's very windy, like woo, it gets swept up like a kite, So we do a lot of leg work and squats, like you experienced in my class yesterday. Like, work those legs big time.
So good.
Yeah. And then we do a lot of like slower pranayama, like slowing down the movement of Vata in the lungs. So like alternate nostril breathing, diaphragmatic breathing, counting of the breath, these things can really slow Vata down and ground it. So basically slow, warm, and grounding are going to be some of the main practices that we do on the mat in the Vata season.
Right. And so for those listeners, they're out there, you think about, again, go back to the 5 elements. Vata is air and ether, right? Air and space. So what Larissa said is she's doing yoga practices, yoga poses that are going to bring in more earth, more water, more fire, right? So that's how you would bring balance to it. And I remember a quote when I was teaching at a yoga journal conference. And, there's different tracks that you can do at these yoga festivals. And all the people that wanted to do power yoga or do the arm balance or the headstand, 2-hour headstand practice, 2-hour handstand practice. It's like, those are all Vata people. They're like always moving too fast anyway. And then like the yin yoga and the restorative are all the people that are Kapha. And they're just like, I guess we're going to lie around on the mat, right? And again, if you go back to like increases like, or even when I walk in and teach yoga class at Kripalu or a room full of people, there's the people that are already doing handstand before class starts and the people that are laying in constructive rest or shavasana before class starts, right? It's like, okay. And as a yoga teacher, like you have everyone in the room. So you have different constitutions, right? But if you're just teaching a 5-element class or you're teaching like to balance what's happening outside or the season that people are in their lives, it's like you're going to meet them where they are, give them a little bit of what they want, but really give them what they need. And if you're teaching to all those 5 elements, every person, regardless of their constitution, is going to walk out of that class more grounded, more balanced, with space in the mind, like space where they need it, space in the joints, space, and having stoked their fire. So it's like the prescription that covers everything, right?
That's exactly right. We don't always crave what we need, or we don't always go for what we need. Sometimes we'll crave or get into a habit of doing yoga practices that are actually increasing the doshas or causing the doshas to go more and more out of balance, like feeling a lot of windiness in the system, or a lot of dryness or coldness or kind of lightness of Vata, and then doing a very fast vinyasa class or doing a class that's very, very peppy, where there's a lot of noise, a lot of action, a lot of movement, and that is going to it's going to increase the Vata. Whereas if you're feeling kind of spinny, it's actually going to be much more balancing and therapeutic to do more like slow flow, yin, restorative, grounding floor poses, things like that. And there can still be some fun pep in the beginning, but often folks will take that and then increase the speed instead of slow the speed down. And the Vata over time just becomes less and less balanced. So it really is all about kind of the middle path. Ayurveda is very much about that. How do we come back to feeling relaxed and also alert at the same time? Yeah.
This episode of the Better Yoga Podcast is brought to you by our friends at Banyan Botanicals. Use the code KARI15 for 15% off their amazing Ayurvedic products. That's KARI 15. Don't forget to use the link in our show notes.
Yeah.
And so, and for folks that are listening, so my question to you is like, because you can do, again, you do this practice that you love to do all the time, and you can kind of get addicted to a certain thing. It's like, oh, you feel so great after yoga, but how do you feel like 3 hours later? That would be a real, because you could walk out like, oh, I had this yoga high, and then you crash, right? You just like squeeze the adrenals, go over adrenalize, and then again, 3 hours later, it's like, oh, you're going for, as you would say, the injectables. But for people to kind of think about the same thing, like you said, sometimes we don't crave what is really best for us. And so Ayurveda is very clear about the innate intelligence of every single cell in our body. But and I'm saying the listeners, you start to eat poorly or do things, it starts to perverse that intelligence in the body, right? Like the more sugar you eat, the more sugar you need to feel like you're getting the sweet taste, right? That's when that has spoiled, as you would say, or vitiated. And so the same thing with choices we make in our life, whether it's not going to bed at the right time or sleeping in too late, or, making bad food or beverage choices, things like that. And so just to briefly go back to, like, think of that yoga journal conference, like, what would be really good poses or breathing practices for Vata, Pitta, Kapha dominant people?
Yeah, and so knowing your constitution is a wonderful thing. There are lots of online questionnaires that folks can take, but they're not always very thorough or accurate. But it's a good way to start. Just Google an intake form. What's my dosha? That kind of thing. And there are loads and loads out there on the internet. But knowing your constitution is not nearly as important as knowing what's causing you suffering, right? Or knowing what's out of balance in the moment. And those two things are different. So right now there's a lot of focus in the world and in the West on, knowing one's constitution, because we all have all 5 elements, we all have all 3 doshas, but we're each made up of a different proportion of those doshas. So some people are more sort of light on their feet and more subtle and peppy. They have more Vata, more space and wind in their makeup. And that's not an imbalance. That's not a vitiation. It's just their genetic code.
How they're put together.
Exactly. Some people are more Pitta. They're just born with more fire in their system. So they run a little hotter. They're a little more intense. They move a little faster. They're kind of sharp. And again, not an imbalance. It's just how they're born. It's what they're made of. Kapha folks tend to have more strength, more power, more endurance, more stamina. They're the strongest of the 3, but they move a little slower, right? And so the investigation into constitution is a very valuable one, and it gives a lot of insight into how to more healthfully live life. But it's actually not step 1. Step 1 is to see how to live more in harmony with nature, because we're all affected by the weather and the seasons, no matter what the constitution, right? And so so that's something. So if we're living life based on the season, just like we're turning on the air conditioner or the heat, or changing jackets and into bathing suits and summer dresses, we change based on the season and the weather. We want to do the same thing on the yoga mat. So in the cold season of fall and winter, we would want to do more grounding postures. So more postures on the floor, right? Spend more time down on the ground, stretching out the legs. Basically any like leg opener, hip opener kind of sequence is going to work pretty well for Vata, because it's going to work to ground down and to soothe the body, to basically deactivate the sympathetic nervous system, which, by the way, we want for all 3 doshas. We want to get into the rest and digest system, even in a tough class. But I would say lots of seated twists and things like pigeon pose and child's pose, head to knee pose, right? We can do Janu Shirshasana, Paschimottanasana, anything that's really down on the ground, stretching out the legs and hips. Those are going to work well. Now, don't get discouraged by that, because we can do postures for Vata that are more advanced, more challenging, right? Vata yoga doesn't mean gentle. Right? It can be advanced as well, but Vata yoga does mean slow and grounding, right? So that's important to decipher, because sometimes folks think Vata yoga has to be gentle. It doesn't, right? Just like yesterday's class.
No, her class was so hard. Yeah. It was so harsh.
Yeah, it can be tough for sure, but it's slow and stabilizing, right? Yeah. So then along with that, pranayams for Vata would be like diaphragmatic breathing, alternate nostril breathing, counting of the breath. All of these things help to slow the lungs down and the movement of the breath down, and thereby the nervous system and the endocrine system, and then the mind. So those. It's
going to do everything, right? Like the prana is the bridge between the physical and the mental. So you slow the breath down, the mind is going to follow right away.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So generally, more the yin and restorative for Vata. But again, it could be like slow flow. It could be a lot of advanced, pretzel-y postures, just down on the ground, very slow and grounding, yeah. For Pitta, summer season, we're going to do more cooling postures. So lots of wide arm and wide leg poses that air out the armpits and air out the groin. So things like wide angle forward fold and happy baby pose and bound angle. These postures are going to help air the system out, which is what we need in the summer season, right? In the middle of summer, like who wants hot vinyasa? It's not so great because
people do it. People still do it.
Yeah. And then they suffer from inflammation and acid reflux and such because it's too much fire in the body.
Yeah.
And so we want to balance out that hot, humid season with poses that are more cooling and refreshing. So I would do things like moon salutations in the summer season. And a lot of those wide leg, like the whole Prasarita Padottanasana, sequence. There's so many things that we can do that are wide arm and wide leg that are going to cool the body down. For pranayamas, all the cooling breaths. So Shitali, Sitkari, these are cooling. It means cooling in Sanskrit. These are great pranayams in the summer. I would let go of things like Ujjayi and Kapalabhati and Bhastrika and Kumbhak, breath retentions, because they're all heating.
Right.
And so
no breath of fire, just like you wouldn't light a fire in your house in July.
Right. Just like nobody's having like beef stew and a fire
lasagna
in the middle of July. Yeah. It just doesn't work. It doesn't match, So
or just think about how awful you'd feel, right? But then like, oh wait, why am I still doing that? Right? I'm not. I put my winter coat away. I'm not wearing a hat and scarf. Not lighting a fire. Why am I doing hot yoga?
Exactly.
In my 50s in the summer.
With hot flashes and menopause. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it doesn't work out so well. So we want to add more awareness and skillfulness to how yoga should change based on the seasons of the year, based on the weather, and based on the seasons of life too. Now, Kapha dosha, that spring season, that's actually the season to kick things up. So Kapha is the season of, rain and fog and dampness and heaviness and thickness. And
it's mud season here where you and I both live.
That's right. And so it's the season to use opposite qualities. So now we want sun salutes. Now we want Bhastrika and breath of fire and Ujjayi and things that are going to heat and lift and essentially evaporate excess water and earth element, right? Clear out the mud from the mind and the body. And so that does not need to be advanced or vigorous, right? Just like Vata classes don't need to be gentle. They could be pretty intense and pretzel-y. They just need to be slow. But for Kapha, we want things to happen with a little more pep, a little more speed, a little more oomph, a little more variety, a little more fun. You kind of shake things up in the Kapha mud season. But that does not mean aggressive. That does not mean it has to be vigorous. We could do a gentle class for Kapha that's peppy, where you get sweat, but there's like nothing very challenging in it. You just sort of stay at the gentle thing over and over and over again, and it's going to boost metabolism, get a little sweat going, burn off the mucus, clear out excess, water retention, weight gain, stuff like that. So again, always practicing to one's fitness level and never getting pushy or aggressive. But in the Kapha season, we want to add more fire and movement, essentially, to burn up that excess Kapha. So we get to have a lot of variety throughout the year, right?
Right.
More of that slow grounding practice in fall and winter, more pep and pizzazz in the spring, and more of that cooling, refreshing, just like nice, satisfying big stretches in the summer season for Pitta.
Right. Mm-hmm. And then I think that's depth enough. I mean, we won't get into the time of day or seasons. But those can also be tweaked according to the time of year and all that stuff. So, so a question to you now, Larissa, what are some small, accessible things that people can do starting today, starting tomorrow, depending on when you listen, that can start aligning their lifestyle with principles of Ayurveda? First, top 3 recommendations to like the biggest bang for your buck.
So we could think of lifestyle in Ayurveda as having a similar goal as the yamas and niyamas in the 8-limb path of yoga. And that Ayurvedic lifestyle is very much about becoming more peaceful, more balanced, more positive. We could say in Sanskrit more sattvic. Sattva means balance or harmony or peace. And so the yamas and niyamas focus on different ways of sort of cleaning up our act a little bit, like living more in harmony with our neighbors, being better members of the community and society, and then taking better care of self. And so I would say number 1 from the Ayurvedic perspective would be to work the yamas and niyamas, to really get to know those. So all of you out there who are yogis, yamas and niyamas come before asana, pranayama, and meditation. And so if this 8-limb path is newer to you, or if you've come in through the path of asana or pranayama and haven't learned the yamas and niyamas, get a yoga book on them and start to learn about how those can be woven into life. So I would say that's step 1. Is start to really live the yamas and niyamas more, because that's going to support the yogic and Ayurvedic way of life, without a doubt. Right. Step 2 would be hydrate more with liquids that are room temperature or warm. So to reduce iced drinks is a very, very useful step to boost digestive strength and ability. And in the West, we over ice things. And ice and very cold liquids slow down digestion, right? The body has to heat up that liquid before it can be absorbed. And so drinking things that are cold, there's somewhere actually in the classic text that says hot liquids are absorbed and assimilated into the system. They help rehydrate in about 30 minutes. And room temperature liquids do that in about an hour. And they don't know how long it takes for iced liquids to get absorbed. They don't actually rehydrate the body well at all. It's very inefficient. And we know that cold constricts, right? And so to hydrate well, and I see this with clients. I'm a clinician, as are you, and I've been doing one-on-one diet and lifestyle consultations for over 15 years, and so many of my clients come dehydrated, and that causes a whole host of troubles for all 3 doshas.
Right.
And so coming back to hydration with warm and wet would be my number 2 choice in lifestyle, because it's going to pay off in supporting immunity, clearing out toxins, rehydrating the tissues of the body, reducing a sense of agitation. A lot of agitation can be reduced by hydration, actually.
Also reducing pain and inflammation, and people don't even know that this chronic joint pain that they have. It's just well, if you think about, go back to those qualities that you were talking about, if something is dry and then it gets, friction causes heat, and, it's yeah.
Yeah, so many common experiences of suffering can be alleviated by like really committing to good hydration. And we love herbal teas, mixing those in, but just drinking warm water is plenty. It can be warm water with a little squeeze of lime in there or a little squeeze of lemon, but hydrate more. That's number 2.
Yeah, especially, I don't know if you have the clients that say they just don't like water.
Yeah.
They don't like water, with just putting a little lime, a little lemon, a cucumber in it, and
Cucumber's great.
or something, anything that can also be an added boost to balance the dosha that is causing the suffering. And then suddenly it's like a refreshing beverage.
Absolutely.
They'll want to drink more of.
Yeah. And and just for listeners who have excess fire in the belly, if you work with acid reflux, things like that, avoid the lemon, because that citrus is it will poke at Pitta dosha and make it worse. But lime is a little better, or cucumber would be better. Yeah.
Yeah, and for those listeners that have reflux or GERD, like if you think about a lemon, it's like a little sun. It's a little ball of fire. But lime is the only citrus that's green.
Yeah.
Green is the color of the trees, the grass. It's like cooling. It's nature, right? Which is another thing to just balance Vata and Pitta, right?
It's such
Time
a good
outside.
point, Kari. Exactly. Yeah. So like,
Just
really
look at the
qualities,
lime,
yeah.
and then look at like a tangerine, an orange, tangelo, a grapefruit, a lemon. They're all on like the orange and yellow spectrum, and then you have this lime, and its magical qualities is the citrus, but it's cooling.
It's the only one. It's the only one.
The only one. And for me, who came to Ayurveda through like skin issues, I used to drink lemon water every morning and thinking, oh my God, this is another thing. It's like, it's so healthy. Lemon water. I'm helping. I'm reducing toxins, flushing my body, hydrating first, waiting an hour and a half before I have my coffee. And the day that I realized, and I'd learned or read somewhere, like lime is cooling, lemon's heating, I put lime in my water in the morning. My face didn't feel like I had a sunburn that day for the first time, because it was also probably, it was like, spring accumulating into summer, like it was Pitta's accumulating. And I've never went back. Never went back. Lime water for everybody in the morning now. It's like so good. Yeah.
And listeners, you'll, as you get to know the doshas more, you'll see that Kari and I both have a decent amount of Pitta in our constitutions. Yeah, that's for sure. So we both reduce the lemon. I have a little more Kapha in my constitution, certainly, than she does. But we both have a good dose of Pitta in us. So hydration. So work the yamas and niyamas, work hydration, and then step 3 is really a health and wellness non-negotiable, to be honest. It's mindful eating. So in Ayurveda diet, we haven't talked really about diet at all today. It's a huge topic. It's a very popular topic. A lot of people come into Ayurveda through the diet, through the food, which is very nourishing and healing, working in Ayurvedic diet. But how we eat is more important than what we eat. And that's a statement. How we eat is more important than what we eat. Just as long as we're not eating like total junk food, if you're eating pretty well, then how we eat becomes more important. So many folks are eating on the go, on the run, while multitasking, while driving, while working, while watching the news, while watching something violent or irritating, while having tough conversations. And in all of those situations, the fight or flight nervous system is stimulated, which tanks digestive ability, because we know from modern science that when we're in the fight or flight nervous system state, which is not just for an emergency or a crisis, it's the go, 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 do nervous system. But whenever we're in that system, the energy and blood are literally pulled away from the stomach and sent out to the limbs and up to the brain to take action, right? So that tanks digestive capability. That's fact. That's proven by research. Ayurveda's known it for thousands of years, but modern science has caught up now.
They've caught up.
And so a lot of folks are working with acid reflux, constipation, gas and bloating, extra weight, toxicity, headaches, feeling unsatisfied from their meals, constantly snacking, having strong cravings, all of these things are signs of not eating mindfully. Is if we eat in a relaxed manner, focus on the food, chew thoroughly, savor the flavors and textures and aromas of the food, then that allows us to eat in the rest and digest nervous system state, the parasympathetic nervous system state, in which the gut is flooded with good energy and digestive juices, supporting the microbiome and helping to break down that food and turn it into good quality tissue, while also bringing satisfaction to the mind from the meal and contentment from the meal. And eating mindfully, like, this it's my top thing with clients, because folks can have chronic digestive issues or chronic headaches or chronic weight that they're working with, and just changing how they eat makes just incredible benefit to these clients, and so many things can be alleviated, and some chronic issues can actually be reversed just by doing mindful
without
eating.
even changing the food.
Without adding, like,
without
herbs,
even changing the food,
spices,
which is like
changing the food, exactly.
which is how you know. And I'm reminded because, and we'll put this in the show notes, but Larissa and I teach this together at different times during the year, and we have a workshop that's on the yoga platform, on Better Yoga. But we teach a 5-day program, and in our PowerPoint, it's like, you are what you eat, and this is the the mantra that we grew up with. You are what you eat, and the food pyramid and all those healthy things. But like Ayurveda is like, it's not just that. And you said it's much more important is how, but also when, right? And just, again, talking about what's so hard in the West is our iced beverages, but also the heavy dinner. Eating the biggest meal at dinner. And that's where I'm still bravely working with teenagers that are out at practice till 6 o'clock at night or 7 o'clock at night, and they don't get home, and then they're starving. And it's like, until the family gets to come together again, it's really, we should come together for dinner at 5 and then go back to something. But yeah, so just like you said, it just goes to show you don't even have to, even if they think they're making the best choices, it's not just about the what. As you said, the big emotions are on the go. Like when you're sitting down, the abdominal organs release, they relax. It's like, I'm ready for the food to come in. I'm in a happy place where I can focus only on you. Versus you're on a deadline at work, you've had a fight with someone, this is going on. It's like you get that you can literally feel like the twisting, the disconnect or the discord in the body, in the abdominal organs, and you're going to put food on top of that. It's going to sit there. It's going to be heavy. It's going to go right into ama. It's going to turn into toxins. We will have a podcast on ama alone.
Right. So like as you're saying, Kari, it's not what we eat, but it's actually what we digest. Right? It's not what we eat, but what we digest. And so how we eat is a non-negotiable for health and wellness. It has to happen. We have to start getting a more mindful eating, like put phones down, turn away from the computer at work, take your allotted half an hour lunch break, right? Your boss has to give it to you. So take your lunch break and sit in a relaxed place and don't complain with your colleagues. Like it's best to take lunch and have it in a relaxed manner. Look out the window, go to a park, eat in your car, not driving, but park in your car if that's the only place you can get some privacy, but to have some downtime for the meals, that's essential. And eating, really, Ayurveda would say, have, a breakfast based on your hunger level. Eat a big lunch. Lunch should be the biggest meal of the day, right? Where you have all the rest of the day to digest it, right? So eat your toughest foods at lunch, your thickest foods. Have your dessert at lunch, actually. That's what
I love
Ayurveda
that.
says. Yeah, I know. That's our favorite Ayurveda tip from the classics. Eat dessert at lunch, yeah.
Yeah.
And then supplemental meal. Supper should be supplemental, right? It's meant to be a smaller, earlier dinner. And as you've identified in the West, that's tough, but it's doable. We can reduce portion sizes and we can eat in a more mindful way. Eating somewhere between 5 and 7 p.m. for most folks is the ideal time. And that takes some practice. I have a nice article that I've written on this topic, so folks can check that out too.
Oh, good. We'll link to that in the show notes. And you don't have to do everything at once, and you don't have to, if you eat at 8 o'clock at night, it's not like suddenly you have to rearrange your whole time that you eat at 5. You can start to dial it back 15 minutes at a time, because also Ayurveda is very clear about like nothing harsh. And we know, you just set yourself up to fail and then throw in the towel and not want to do anything kind of thing. So the gentle.
Slow, sustainable change.
That's where we
all
like
about
the gentle.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so it's like if you, folks listening, if they've been eating on the go, at work, see what it's like to just, make one small shift. Just if you're eating in your cubicle, just turn off the computer, or turn away from the computer. Try that, those kinds of things. So little changes make a big difference. Yeah. So those are my top 3. They are free, right? They're free. They are simple, but that doesn't make them easy, right? And so the Ayurvedic lifestyle really does require commitment, as does the yoga path, right? So small, sustainable choices, like let go of the ice in your water. Just go to cold water without ice for a while. And then after a while, go to room temperature, And then after a while, start working the warm water, yeah? So we can make changes like that.
Yeah, it's such great advice, Larissa. It really is. What has been the most transformative, if something comes to mind, is the most transformative or surprising thing that you've learned from your own journey with Ayurveda? Or Ayurveda and yoga?
That's a great question, Kari. What comes to mind now is the idea that whenever things are complex or complicated, the remedy is to simplify. So those listening, if you're feeling overwhelmed, spread too thin, slowing down a little bit, doing less, saying no, inviting in just a little bit of quiet time, a little downtime, simplifying. That's the remedy. That's the best medicine.
I just got waves down my back. My Pana Vayu just went like, right? And it's got a little emotional because it's so hard for people. And in our world where it doesn't seem to be slowing down, there's just more demand on people, and it's getting more complicated and more complex. And everything that is designed and invented and implemented in technology to make it easy for us, like actually it's not. And I don't have the stat, but I read something of like, we used to spend so many hours a week doing housework, right? And then like the washing machine was invented, and this was invented, and that was invented, and like now we still spend the same amount of time doing more, right? And working outside. But it's so profound. And that's like you said, like it's simple, it's not easy. But the simplicity, this is what I love about Ayurveda, is that the simplicity of it, once you understand these concepts, which are so simple, the profoundness of them. Right? I know we've shared stories before about practitioners where years and years of suffering and thinking they had chronic disease because this is their genetic disposition, their father had it, their grandfather had it, or they just shifted one thing. Because your body is a self-healing machine.
Big time.
years of pain, inflammation, chronic upset or dis-ease in the body, mind, you would change one thing. I mean,
yeah,
right?
Right. It's true. And
Comes back to
listeners may
balance.
not even, believe that yet, but it is
I
true.
know.
Right? It's like, it's too simple. I need...
Screaming from the top of the mountain.
But don't I need
Ayurveda
ashwagandha?
for all.
I've got to have ashwagandha though, right? Isn't it that? That's the ticket, right? It's like, it actually is. And this is where bringing Ayurveda into yoga is so helpful. But in general, it's about shifting habits and patterns and choices and lifestyle. Ayurveda has loads of tricks, up its sleeve, lots of great herbs and remedies and cleanses and things that are fantastic and wonderfully healing, but it really is about changing how we're living. And folks can just have dramatic shifts and transformations. So there's hope, right? It's one of the tenets of Ayurveda. There's always hope. There's always hope. Yeah. And folks can get great benefit with just a few things. One change, a couple little shifts. Yeah.
And that begets more change, right? Because once you start to shift something, you see like, God, you want to do one more thing, right? Mm-hmm. Instead of thinking you have to do everything, not knowing what it's going to, Yeah. Right. I love that there's always hope. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So seems like a good place to kind of move into this, because the intersection, again, we've covered a lot of this, the intersection of Ayurveda and yoga in modern life, right? And the three things that people can begin to incorporate right now, and how all of these new scientific discoveries that you're like, the rishis said that 5,000 years ago. Now we have the double blind.
We appreciate it. Love the
group,
research.
right?
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah.
And really, I think it's about awareness, right? Like you said, like the mindful eating, like being aware of what you're doing, being aware of how you're feeling, because your body is always giving you feedback and signals. And it's that simplifying and slowing down that really allows you to listen and to tune in. Personally, I see Ayurveda as gaining popularity in the West, finally. And I'm sure that you're seeing that, because you're super busy teaching about it all the time. And so are there any emerging trends or challenges that you see that you want to kind of highlight or talk about? And then we'll just get into some programs that you're excited to be bringing to people.
Yeah, Ayurveda is definitely spreading in the West. It's great. It's in most of like the top tier 5-star spas across the country, really around the world. Like, you can find Ayurvedic treatments in so many spas nowadays. So that's a great way in. We're also getting lots of cookbooks, lots of Ayurveda cookbooks, very popular. Folks are coming in through the diet, and which is very focused on organic food, seasonal food, healthy, fresh food, well-prepared food, that kind of thing. Ayurveda is not a vegetarian system, by the way. We do use dairy products, meat products, but sparingly, and only high quality as well. So those who are thinking about that. So we see that coming in. But Ayurveda is starting to show up in on social media and lots of different platforms in Hollywood. There have been Ayurvedic gifts showing up in the Hollywood swag bags. And so, Kate Hudson wrote a book that includes a lot of Ayurveda information. It's actually an excellent book.
Nice.
But, we've seen Ayurveda showing up on Oprah and such. And so Ayurveda is making its way now. It's, I'd say, about a decade behind Chinese medicine in a lot of ways, in terms of popularity here in the West. So it's spreading. But one of the ways it does spread is, and I've already identified this, the herbs. The herbs are fantastic. Herbs
right, the ashwagandha trend.
Ashwagandha trend, yeah. The turmeric trend, and now it's an ashwagandha trend, and then, it keeps shifting. And so it's the herbs are very potent medicine. And we could think of Ayurveda using a health, pyramid, just like we see in the West, like the food pyramid, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like herbs are at the very top, just like coffee, alcohol, desserts are at the very top of the food pyramid, It's like you get a little bit here and there, but we shouldn't have too much of it, And so the herbs are like that. They're really potent and powerful. And we need the foundation of that health pyramid happening. So the diet, the lifestyle, the self-care, care for the senses, time in nature, proper exercise, these things are all the principles or the foundation of that pyramid. And so for those who are interested in using Ayurvedic herbs, I would beg you not to self-diagnose and self-prescribe, because a lot of these herbs have pretty strong side effects. And they can backfire, and I've seen it backfire numbers of times over the years. So it's best to consult with a certified healthcare practitioner, an Ayurvedic practitioner, or an Ayurvedic health counselor, or an Ayurvedic doctor, which there are Ayurvedic doctors here in the West. They have to practice with a number of limitations. So Ayurveda is not certified, here in the West. So they kind of practice like Ayurvedic practitioners, but there are Ayurvedic doctors here too. But to see someone who is well trained and certified before working with herbs, otherwise those can backfire and cause more trouble. Yeah, so that would be my main
And
caution.
also, if your friend or neighbor is taking something and they're a totally different constitution than you are, so it will have a very different effect in you. It might actually increase something that is already going on. So
yeah,
there's that as well.
that's right. Like ashwagandha is a very heating herb. It's very popular. It's a very hot herb. And for me as a Pitta, if I take ashwagandha in the summer, like, phew,
Yeah, it's like I don't take it from April till
like now,
end of September.
Yeah, right. It's too hot. It'll give me acid reflux. It'll make my pit smell. Like I never wear deodorant, but if I take ashwagandha, I need deodorant. Because it really it means to smell like a horse. That's what the
Like a
word
horse.
means in Sanskrit.
I love that smell.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So it's a
I always
cool-
smell like a horse.
Yeah.
I have 6 of them.
Yeah, you're an exception to the rule.
Yeah.
Sorry.
yeah, but I don't take it in the summer. Okay. Where can people find you?
They can find me on Better Yoga, right, where I teach Ayurvedic yoga as well as Ayurvedic cleanses, and a number of workshops introducing Ayurveda with you, Kari, of course. So folks can find me there. You can take yoga series classes with me and learn about how to do the Ayurvedic yoga. So that's a main place. You can find me on my website, larissacarlson.com. And that's where folks can sign up for one-on-one Ayurveda consultations and also see my events calendar. I travel all over the place to teach Ayurveda as well as yoga and mindfulness and breath work and things. You can follow me on social media. I'm on Instagram. My handle is @LarissaHallCarlson, my full name. And also I'm on Insight Timer, which is a wonderful free mindfulness app which has thousands and thousands and thousands of free mindfulness audio tracks, and just a really great resource for folks around the world. And so check me out on Insight Timer too. Yeah, and loads of other places, but those are my top spots for now.
That's great. Upcoming programs?
We have a New Year's reset cleanse, and so that's going to be January 2nd to 5th. This may be published after that, so but next year you can join the reset cleanse. We also do a spring and a fall cleanse on Better Yoga, so that's coming up. I'll be doing some Kapha balancing yoga on Better Yoga in the spring, so you can check that out as well. I also do a lot on perimenopause and menopause support and libido with Ayurveda. And so I run a 6-week online course called Sattvic Sensuality, Wholesome Libido Boosting with Ayurveda, which is one of my passions. And so that'll be, whenever this is published, that'll be coming up at some point in the year. So you can check that out too. Yeah.
Right. You do that in the spring, right?
Yeah, I
do you have a new one in the spring?
I do it twice a year.
February.
Yeah, February and October, usually. Yeah. And then also, Kari and I are going to be together at Kripalu in the spring doing our healthy weight and wellness 5-day immersion. So that would be a great time to come and study with us in person and be supported with diet, lifestyle, self-care, and the Ayurvedic yoga all together. So that's a really awesome program.
And at Kripalu, so you don't have to make a meal. You can just immerse yourself in
organic
Ayurvedic foods.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
and
get
nature.
Spa treatments. You can go into the spa, get your Ayurvedic massages.
It's so great.
Pretty special place to go. So I would encourage folks to join us there as well.
And we'll be there at the end of April, the last week in April for 5 days. And all this will be below in the show notes. So Larissa, our final question. If you weren't doing this, if yoga and Ayurveda were not what you were doing as your career, what would you be doing?
Well, I have 2 answers. One is practical. I would probably still be an English teacher. I was originally trained as a high school English teacher, literature. I worked as a college English teacher for several years in my 20s. So I'd probably be doing that, which I love. But sort of the dream would be the race car driving. Yeah, as a Pitta, I like to go very fast.
As a Pitta going.
I do like to go very fast. And so, yeah, I'm a Skip Barber Racing School driver as well, so graduate. So, yeah, I wouldn't mind being on the speedway.
Every time I interview Larissa or we do these little workshops and stuff, she'll drop something that I'm like, I always learn something new about her, which is amazing, right? Because we've known each other a long time. So thank you so much, Larissa. Always a joy and an education to get to talk to you. So thank you for being our first Ayurvedic guest, Ayurvedic educator on the Better Yoga podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. Wishing all you listeners a beautiful day. Thank you.
Thanks, friends.
We hope you enjoyed today's show. Don't forget to check out our 2-week free trial for unlimited yoga, breathwork, and Ayurveda on betteryoga.net.